Hello and welcome to Phasers to Malky, your Scottish Star Trek Attack Wing podcast. I'm your host Pete, and with me is my co-host Harley. Perhaps we should begin this by explaining the name for the benefit of those that do not know. Harley, what does Malky mean?
Malky? Well, me being from Scotland, obviously, I know what Malky means, so to our audience, we should explain that Malky is a Scottish colloquialism, and I'll let you give the meaning.
So the Wikipedia article on this has it as a slang term originating from Glasgow on the west coast of Scotland, used to describe slashing someone with an open razor. This apparently comes from the rhyming slang Malcolm, Malky, razor, Fraser. Malky. Now, we don't really notice that, do we?
Sticking the heat in them.
Aye. it has many connotations, but for our purposes, it's sticking the heat into people, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not that we're trying to give all our phasers to a guy called Malky.
Yeah, which someone thought. Oh well.
Oh well. Anyway.
So, yes, onwards and upwards. On this, our first episode, we're going to look at infinite diversity and infinite combinations, which in this case is referring to the various ways you can actually play Attack Wing. Well, we all know the rules as found within the starter sets and the downloadables from WizKid's website. There are several variations of these rules that can be found out in the wild that change the game in various ways. So we're going to cover what they are and their kind of uses.
Plus, you should also say, how did you discover Attack Wing? What is Attack Wing? That may be listening that is saying, right, they're talking about this game, but what is it?
That's a good plan. So, what is Attack Wing? For those people who, for some reason, are on a Star Trek Attack Wing podcast and don't know what it is, it can happen.
So it can happen.
It can.
Yep.
So obviously it's Star Trek for a start, and then Attack Wing. It's a rule set originally developed by is it Wings of War? Did it originally?
Yeah, the World War II game.
Yeah.
Or World War One.
Then bought out by Fantasy Flight Games, applied to their X-Wing series, which is about lots of little fighter craft shooting at each other, and then licensed by WizKids and brought out as Star Trek Attack Wing and later D&D Attack Wing, although we're interested in the Star Trek one.
Yes, of course.
Short version, it's spaceships pew-pewing each other on the table.
With cards that give you boosts and abilities.
Yeah,
and
crew and tech slots and other...
Exactly. It's a game of... It's a turn-based game of skill.
And cards. So many cards.
And cards. So many cards.
Yeah. You take your ship, equip your ship. First turn, set your maneuver dial. So you've got a little dial. Secretly hide that. Opponent does the same. Begin maneuvering, attempting to guess what the opponent is doing, and then using your various abilities and crew members and weapon systems to try and take down the other guy or complete objectives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's quite an addictive game.
Indeed.
It certainly is for me when I've discovered it.
It is for both of us, I think. So these rules then that kick the whole game off. The rules as written, is the raw is the kind of abbreviation of that, which is the rules that actually come within the starter set or from that download. They lay out the core mechanics of the game, how to play the game, how to build your fleets.
Without restriction.
Yeah, without restriction. That's the key point. It's interesting to note that also the raw rules are not actually the tournament rules. So there's a tournament scene with Attack Wing. Set out by WizKids but hosted by local gaming clubs. And the actual rules as raw are not the tournament rules. They've been modified to bring them ever so slightly in check.
I think that's to make the game competitive and play competitive for competition. Like your tournaments, you play to win prizes and things like that. I think.
Yeah, it is the kind of bring some sanity to it as well.
Yeah, they had to bring sort of tournament rules in. Just to sort of make the game, if you were actually playing it competitive, rather than playing rules as written, which you could just say, right, I'm going to take one ship and just
dreadnought.
Max it out
Yeah.
over and above a certain point limit, and therefore just go for it and making this super hard to hit, super a very big hitting ship that would just take ages to chip away at.
Which is what happened in the first few months of the game, if I remember right. People just
Right.
built these dreadnoughts that were nearly impossible to kill, and then the Borg came along, and so they built Borg dreadnoughts, and it was even worse. So,
Yeah.
kind of takes us on to the next kind of thing, which is the tournament play, which is actually the rules as specified by WizKids that detail how to play in a tournament setting.
Yep.
The first big change, obviously, is it's a 50-point limit per ship, so those dreadnought ships are very hard to produce.
Well, yeah, 50-point limit per ship, unless you have one of the oversized bases, be it
Yeah.
the Borg cube or Borg cubes, should I say? There's more than one, or the Deep Space Nine, which you don't really see much of, considering it's a lovely model.
It
But
is nice.
it is nice. But I'm thinking with, would you say, the 2-point fed torps now?
Might be viable. Part of the problem with the big ship models is they are easy targets, but
They're targets.
yeah, they're very big targets. But we're wandering off point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get an extra, is it 8 points for your large base ships that tend to be around the 42-point mark?
Yeah, you're allowed. Well, it would be the over 44 points or 43 points. You're allowed 8 points worth of upgrades. So if you had like Cube 384, it's a 52-point ship. So you're allowed 8 points to put on it, which technically means you've got a 60-point ship, but it doesn't break the rules because of the sheer cost of the ship itself.
Yeah,
but again, you're paying 52 points for a hull 10, shield 10 ship. So you can understand why the cost of the ships are quite high.
Yeah. So on top of that as well, it's now a 3-ship minimum. So you got to have 3 ships in your fleet minimum.
Yep.
Yeah.
3 ships, 50 points max per ship, with a total of 130 points for the tournament. Used to be 120, it's been raised to 130, but I think that's mainly because of the resource.
Yeah.
The resources that have been introduced.
So part of tournament play is the introduced variable point resources. They vary from 1 point to, I think, maybe even 10 points. I think it's the most one.
Yep, and they've got a shelf life as well.
Yeah.
So
if it comes out in March, then a year from that March, it's done. You can't use it in tournament play again. These just add additional effects or enhancements to certain ships, or just little tweaks to give you options outside the standard build.
And you get them for just participating in OP play, which is quite good. It's just a guaranteed resource card that you get for turning up and playing your competition.
Yeah, which is nice actually. You get something out of it even if you lose terribly.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about these tournament play rules is that they are really to level things a little bit and just to not let it be as excessive. In the first few months of the game, it was quite excessive. There was a lot of, dreadnought builds. You'd be able to build ships that could have vast quantities of evade dice and vast quantities of attack dice at the same time, or just be really, really difficult to take down and have lots of. There was a infinite recursion at one point involving dodging damage, where you could just keep cancelling attacks as long as you had these 2 cards on your ship and you. So the idea was just to level that out so you could actually have a fairish game, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense to sort of kind of bring that. But I mean, we talk about obviously the creation of dreadnoughts and stuff. It's still technically possible with
shuttles.
the use of shuttles and stuff. But then you're paying the cost of that. You're not just building the dreadnought for the pure cost. You've got to pay for the shuttle ship,
and then you've got to dock the ship, and there are ways to wreck that docking maneuver. But yeah, and it should also be noted that the tournament rules are actually evolving as we go. Cards come out and are discovered to be horrendously overpowered, or horrendously underpowered, or terrible, or brilliant. And WizKids has the old WizKids online rules forum, or WARF for short, where they errata, much to the annoyance perhaps of most of the player base.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good to get those sort of clarifications regarding cards. I mean, sometimes it takes a while for to get back to you. When it does, then you've got a definitive answer of how something's supposed to interact, rather than just taking as text on card or whatever. Rules as written. So should I say, rules as written on the card. So the card acts out. I mean, reverse course is a big one.
The reverse course nerf.
Prime example of that.
Yeah.
Was you had to use the card as how it was written, and it was deemed to be too.
Oh, it's horrendously powerful. For those that don't know, and I'd be surprised if you didn't know, because there was a bit of a kick-up about it when it got nerfed. Reverse course allowed you to basically just decide to go backwards instead of doing your manoeuvre, and it was a white manoeuvre, and the card wasn't discarded, which was, in the right hands, horrendously powerful.
Yeah, 5 points to change your manoeuvre every turn if you to, depend on how your opponent moved. So, yeah, they look at cards like that and decide whether you need to tweak it or not. And that's how it works. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I first heard of Worf, I thought it was like, why are they referring it to the character from Star Trek?
Yeah.
Until somebody explained it to me what it was.
It's an acronym.
It's an acronym, yep. And but then again, that was in my infant days of getting introduced to attack line.
Yeah. So the other obvious important part of tournament play rules is the tournament organizer. So your TO is the man or woman in charge of the tournament, and they have final say on cards.
Yeah, they're the
additional rules as well.
Yeah, if you do something that's maybe not been covered by Worf, then you have to just basically go with what the TO says. He's in charge. You might not like what he says. Your opponent might not like what he says, but whatever he says, you just need to go with it until there's some question or something's been answered on it at a later time.
Yeah, I mean most TOs are there to keep consistency.
Make sure that everybody. Of course. I mean, keep consistency without taking the fun out of the game.
Of course, yeah.
It's always fun. I mean, this is a game.
Wouldn't be here if it wasn't fun.
Well, that's true.
So that's tournament play. It's a vastly complicated thing. Mostly, if you're playing in a WizKids officially sanctioned or unofficial, regional or national, or the world one, I suppose, as well. You're using the tournament play rules as available on WizKids website, with any WARF FAQs that apply to that.
Yep.
So beyond that, because those two are the kind of main ways people play this game. Beyond that are subsets of rules that further tweak it for various reasons. The first one being penalty pure. Now, penalty pure adds the limitation that when you're building a fleet and you have a Federation ship, you have to pay a penalty if you want to put an out-of-faction card on this. So if you've got a Federation ship and you want it captained by a Romulan captain, then it's going to cost +1 point. Penalty pure states that if you incur a faction penalty of any kind, you can't do it. So you would have to find... There are ways round penalty pure. It kind of just... I think it takes some of the worst of the excess off. When I say excess, there are, in the tournament play rules, you can build some truly horrendous lists that are designed to just do crazy things. If a new player is coming to the game and they roll up, and you roll up with an OP tournament list that is designed to completely curb stomp someone, expecting the person who's coming at you to also bring a list that's designed completely to curb stomp someone, and you show up and you've got your starter set and one other ship and you're like, hey, let's do this, and you get curb stomped, that's no fun. So part of the penalty pure and the other rule sets that follow on from that is to kind of reduce that excess, to make it slightly less hostile for a new player. So... Yeah,
I mean... makes it less hostile for a new player. And like you said, a new player turning up and playing the game for maybe the first time in an OP faction might only be playing with ships and cards that he was only get access to at that particular time. I mean, remember my first build going into Common Ground Games up in Stirling, and I had 3 Federation ships and they had torpedoes on them. Do you know what I mean?
And
Me
no
not
one,
realising.
no one laughed. No one laughed.
And at the time, I thought, "Yep, this is a really good build. It can do some damage." Not realising that torpedoes wasn't really the way forward.
No, the old torpedoes were just terrible. Just
Yeah,
terrible.
high cost. Just to use a secondary arcs at range. Was it 2 to 3? So
Yeah.
but that was just me very infant in the game seeing that. But it might, for new players.
Oh, it can be a massive turn-off. It can be a massive turn-off.
Oh, it could. I mean, but part of the reason, if you've got a really good community playing this game, then if you get a new player that turns up, yeah, they might be a wee bit discouraged from the first time they play with the level of sort of ships that they're seeing, and sort of some of the players that have got far bigger fleet capacities to field a lot more, etc. But certainly when I played, when I met like the likes of yourself and Brian and David and all that up at Stirling to play this game, turning around and being told, if you want access to a ship or a card, drop us a message. So create your build, and if we've got the card to spare, let us know in advance, and we'll provide it for you. So it gave me the ability to play the game without having to own that particular ship at the time, to go on and play. And arms dealers we call you.
Aye. Having access to a couple of arms dealers does help a lot.
Yeah, I like to consider myself now an arms dealer.
Yeah, well, I've certainly
and
borrowed stuff off you.
Yeah, and I've always said to any of the guys, look, and if any of them ask me on the site, I would just say, yeah, I'll bring that along for you, not a problem.
Yeah.
Because I have spent so much into this game. It's ridiculous.
It's best not to count.
Anyway, I think we're digressing off penalty
just
pure.
a tad, yeah. So there's several cards that allow you to mix outside of penalty pure. So while it does tone down the build possibilities of the raw and OP scene, it does leave open a lot of room to make mixed fleets using some of the cards. So cards like Lore, which removes faction penalties for out-of-faction items, and Captured, which immediately makes your ship dual faction with the independent faction.
Can as well,
yeah. There's quite a few of them, more than I can probably list, or more than I can actually remember. So very few cards truly become redundant within penalty pure. One of the kind of problems of moving away from the raw list is some of the cards do become redundant and unusable, or just don't work as intended within that. So yeah, cuts down the sheer amount of let's call it by what it's called, cheese you can bring to a list, and make
cheddar.
Yes. Penalty pure is like I think penalty pure is like the it's a strong cheddar. It's not horrendous. It's not the
not the
blue
extra mature
cheese of OP play.
No.
But it's still, there's a little bit of room to kind of build things that are a bit more involved.
Yeah.
Which isn't, if you've got a ton of stuff, you want to do that, But at the same time, you don't want to alienate new players, which is where Ship Pure comes in. So we're kind of moving down the kind of list of...
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm just about to dive in there and say what Ship Pure is, but I'll let you what Ship Pure is before.
You go for it. You go for Ship Pure.
Well, Ship Pure is when you're creating your build, so all your ships, be it Federation or Romulan, for example, all the cards for that ship share the same faction. So if you had like a Federation ship such as the Enterprise E, for example, then the captain and all its upgrading crew must be Federation. You couldn't put a Romulan captain on on a Federation ship. Likewise, you couldn't put a Federation captain on a Romulan ship. So if you had a Romulan ship, you'd only be able to put Romulan captain cards on it, which is where Ship Pure comes in. And it's the game that we play up at Stirling, and it's the game I'm more used to playing.
Yeah, it's how we tend to think when we're building lists.
Yeah,
It does still allow quite a wide berth of possibilities, but this is where cards start getting rendered unusable. The first one that comes to mind is Borg Alliance, because I really want an excuse to like do a whole set of assimilated Romulan ships and use Borg Alliance on them. But in Ship Pure, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Okay, well, it does depend on the exact interpretation by the TO, but from our point of view, it doesn't work.
Yeah. But it's a good way. I know there's a lot of opinion on Ship Pure. I know folks don't like it. They want to be able to. They bought the game. They want to be able to cards as and when they see fit. Stick anything on any ship and just go for it and play and have fun. And yeah, that's great. But I think there is scope. There is room for Ship Pure to have its niche, so to speak, and I think Ship Pure is good for players coming into the game and getting used to how Attack Wing plays, and it allows, I think, for just that extra bit of competition where you're not up against an absolute cheese of a build because you don't know, or you're not as adept at being able to think about interactions of all the, so to speak. If you're limited to the ship, then it kind of makes it slightly easier for the players.
Absolutely. I think it is. It's a good balance. So while you can use nearly all cards, and you can build some truly ferocious things.
Yeah.
Because you can have your Romulan ship, your Dominion ship, and your Borg ship. You can have them in the list, and you can do some interesting combos with it. It's not as severe as the other ones. You don't need as many ship packs to make it work, because you can run a Fleet Pure, which we'll come to in a minute, but you can run a Fleet Pure list within Ship Pure and still have it be competitive. While if you were running a Fleet Pure list in Penalty Pure or Raw or tournament play, you would be at a disadvantage, I would think. Apart from maybe some niche builds involving a lot of Cloak Mind, you'd probably be at a disadvantage.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're meant pure, which means all your ships have to be of the one faction, and I would say there's only a few factions out there that you would probably get away with doing that.
Yeah. So faction pure is the kind of step even further than Ship Pure, really, which is all of your ships in your fleet must be the same faction, all the cards must be the same faction, which really does absolutely kibosh quite a few cards within the game.
Yes. I mean, faction pure, if you're going to go faction pure, you would see a lot of Federation builds because they've got the most ships, they've got the most cards. Next would be Romulan.
Yeah, the Romulan have got a lot of faction tricks they can do a lot with.
Yeah, so I mean, you'd be looking at Romulan Klingon Federation builds. Trying to pull some sort of faction pure Zindi build would be really difficult.
Yeah. I mean,
even independent. 8472, you could do it still. It's still a nasty build.
But you know what's coming if you're facing an 8472 list, because you have very limited choices, especially if you're retail only.
If you're 8472, it's like, oh yeah, okay, so it's 3 bioships then.
Yeah. So 3 bioships with biotech on it.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the most effective way. Maybe if you're lucky enough to have laid your hands on one of the prize ships, or this is actually the blind brick for the events.
The Omega.
Yeah, the Omega. You might have a couple of 1 or 2 nice to have point things that can do some fun things. But I mean, faction pure is a weird one. It's good for new players because a lot of people get into Attack Wing, a lot of people get into these games and like, oh, I love the Klingons, I just want a Klingon list, I want as many Klingons as I can, I want to build a really cool Klingon fleet.
I mean, oh god, I forget his name. That's terrible.
Yeah, it's Drew.
Drew.
Drew, the Klingon master.
Yes,
Yes,
I mean,
I'm sure he's very happy with recent point changes to base Klingon ships.
oh
But
yes, of course,
yeah,
yes. I mean, he frequently turns up with a Burrell swarm.
yeah, it's impressive to behold. It is impressive to behold. But I mean, it's easier for a new player if they're only having to buy like one faction ships.
Yeah,
Especially if it's the big factions, because lots of people are into the Federation, lots of people are into Romulans, lots of people are into the Cardassians, and lots of people into the Klingons. You know, I know Cardassians are Dominion, but you can quite cheaply build a fleet out of all of those. Um, dog in the background. You
I
can
know.
quite
I
cheaply build a
apologise for
fleet.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's good from that point of view, but it does quite stifle the ability to kind of do stranger and more exotic builds. And each faction, well, kind of not the Feds, because the Feds, as you said, Feds have got so much stuff that
yeah,
they can pretty much do anything they want, except maybe
yeah.
a full cloaking build, and even then you could do it, but it wouldn't be great. Um, you know,
Expensive,
yeah,
but
Klingons are glass cannons. They don't have a lot of good evasion techniques. Or, you know, Romulans have got an interface generator, give themselves more longevity. Klingons don't have that. Romulans are all about the tech and the crew. So,
yeah,
again, in Faction Pure you know what's coming, which makes it good for new players because they're not kind of overwhelmed by what's coming at them. But at the same time, it's very restrictive for older players, or you know, not physically older players, but people who played the game longer.
yeah,
Because yeah, if, like us, we've got racks and racks of this stuff, and you know, I'd really like to do this build, but I can't because we've got to keep it all in faction. So
yeah.
it has its place. I mean, Faction Pure. I play Faction Pure when I'm playing my mates at home
Right.
because it's the most thematic. Because in a real inverted commas situation, Faction Pure would be what you would get in the Star Trek universe. You know, you maybe have a bit of the Klingons assisting the Federation or the Romulans assisting the Klingons or something like that, but for the most part, they would be
Against the Dominion.
yeah, or
Yeah,
all three of them fighting the Dominion, or everyone
yeah,
fighting
yeah,
the Borg. But for the
yeah,
most part, if you were doing a kind of not world-ending event type thing, it would be a fleet of Federation versus that Romulan fleet that's been harassing the sector. You know,
yeah. Or the neutral zone or whatever.
yeah, exactly. So it is useful. It has a place, but probably more in casual play, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't see Faction Pure being an OP play. It would
Unless
just
you
be
had like,
too restrictive.
I mean, it comes down to
Anyway.
your group as well. I mean, if you've got a group of Trek diehards who want as thematic as possible an experience, where they don't want to see Picard driving a sphere, or they
Yeah,
don't want to see a Dominion ship flying alongside a Federation ship,
yeah,
then if that's what you're into, if that's what floats your boat, that's what you do. But from our point of view, I don't think it would really work. It wouldn't be
yeah,
as enjoyable. There is something more restrictive than Faction Pure there, and that's Era Pure, which is an interesting one. And again, this is probably very much for casual play. I mean, I don't, unless you were doing like a one-off event, it's very restrictive. So the idea of Era Pure is you can only use the ships that were associated with that era.
and the cards.
Yeah, and the cards that are only associated with those ships, so it's very restrictive. It's very highly thematic because you can pretty much create episodes of Star Trek out of it. But I mean,
Yeah,
if you're playing the Enterprise era, you know,
it would be Kirk.
well, no, I'm talking about Star Trek Enterprise, that one,
All right, okay,
not the original series. Yeah, so if you're
right.
playing the Enterprise era, you've got the NX-01,
Yep,
and it's not even really it's United Earth, I think, or Allied Earth or something. It's not even the
yep,
Federation. You know, it doesn't become the Federation until later. Um, you've got the Vulcans. You've got a couple of the independent ships, specifically Shran the Man and his Kumari. Uh,
yep.
you've got pretty much all of the Zindi. Zindi become beasts in Era Pure.
Well, yeah, it's like an NX01 sphere. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly. It's good for creating very thematic games,
yeah.
probably based around episodes. That's the best way that Era Pure I think can be worked. I mean, if you're a bunch of hardcore absolute Trekkies that want to do um, one of the OP events and you have to Era Pure it because you want it to be like the episode,
Hmm.
that's something else entirely and makes a fun diversion. But the big sort of limiting factor is that while Ship Pure and Faction Pure is a bit easier for new starts, Era Pure is actually a bit harder because getting your hands on the ships can be problematic. So if you wander into a situation where it's Era Pure and it's the next generation, you're probably
Yeah,
being okay because you've got a Galaxy class and a Nebula class in the starter set.
yeah,
Or, the two Klingon ships, the Vorcha and the Bird of Prey in the starter set. That's Era Pure. But
yeah,
if someone was doing a TOS episode and you wanted to run Feds, you're going to need the Tiny Prize, which is the USS Enterprise, no bloody A, B, C, or D, or
yep.
E,
The original.
the original Enterprise, and probably 3 other Connies that are all prizes for tournaments, which, depending on where you get them from, can cost you silly money. So it suddenly becomes,
Like the Intrepid.
yeah, the Intrepid and the Defiant, not that
Yep,
Defiant, the other Defiant.
yep.
There's another one as well, can't remember which one it is. But, it actually becomes harder for people to play Era Pure. So again, it's great for thematic purposes, but not really great for a tournament scene, unless you're doing this one-off.
Yeah, and I think though there is, like you said, a place for Era Pure. I mean, you buy a ship pack. Say you bought the Tiny Prize, and you do get the mission cards.
Yeah, I mean that's where
And
Era
those,
Pure does shine. When you're
yeah,
playing casually with your friends and you've got the mission card out and you're doing, combat maneuver or
Kobayashi Maru, or
Kobayashi Maru. Kobayashi Maru is basically enforced Era Pure pretty much, or Fleet
yeah,
Pure perhaps, and very
yeah,
difficult. You've got a very limited time frame on that one to pull it off. So
yeah.
yeah, the missions are nice in that regard.
It's I think it has its place if you're doing the mission cards and you want to be like, right, well, I'm using the cards that came with the ship,
Yeah.
and you go down that route.
Yeah. Well, as an example, I played the mission that comes with, I think it's the NX-01, which is the escape the Suliban ships.
All right, okay,
So I did it first with the NX-01 using only the cards from the pack and a Vulcan ship,
right,
which represents the rescue ship. And I just played it solo just as an experiment to see how it would go. I was very bored that day. And yeah, it was okay. The NX-01 got out, it was pretty touch and go. The Vulcan ship actually got shot up a lot because it came in too close. I flew it in too close and suddenly it got swarmed by the things. And then I thought, what would happen if I just went to town and got out like the tournament stuff and some of the things. So I ended up with like a 6 of 8 Defiant dropping
right, okay,
mines.
right, okay.
And I think it was Enterprise E coming in to help it with a dorsal array. That match didn't last very long at all, and the Suliban self ships were not a threat whatsoever. Because
Right.
the Defiant wasted most of them with the first minefield it dropped and then promptly just flew away, dodging everything else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, it's the mission card that was
Yeah.
selected for that. It's not really for that ship.
No.
It's not for an Enterprise-y.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not for a Defiant, and it's certainly not designed for the type of weaponry that you got with those builds.
Absolutely. But yeah, there is one. Well, it's not actually one. It's a multitude of other ways to play the game actually that we should probably cover
Okay.
for the sake of completeness, and that's mods. Now,
Okay.
mods can be simple things like adding shield facings. The idea that you can, your ship is far more durable because every quadrant, all 4 quadrants of your ship, on the cross on the x-axis, which would be the 45 forward firing arc, it's a 90 forward firing arc.
Yeah, so you're looking at bringing in like a Madder style.
Yeah. So people there are quite a few of these, and if anyone's interested in seeing some really good mods, I'd swing by Board Game Geek and check out their modification section. But there are some
Yeah.
really interesting ones out there that go from as far as adding, all stop to the ships, right up to completely redesigning the game with Armada-style rules, or adding a narrative element to the system, or adding AI cards so you can play it solo.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the shield mod you talked there, it's interesting, and I would like to play that. If your starting shield value is say 5, then that's 5 forward, 5 rear, and
Yeah.
5 port and starboard. Do you know what I mean?
It makes the ships much more durable. It also means that positioning is more important, and the thing about it is the games are going to go on longer. Most attack wing games are designed to last about an hour, unless you're doing some massive fleet battle, which is awesome but very time consuming.
Yes.
So I mean, if you're wanting one-on-one ship,
it's thematic.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many times in a Star Trek episode have you seen that aft shields are failing, but front shields are fine, so they divert power from front shields, and I like that aspect. If you lost like your rear shields on, say, the Enterprise, and then you just say, right, well, I'm going to take one shield from the forward and port and starboard and put it to the rear.
Yeah.
That could be, say, an action to reinforce the rear shields, so...
Yeah, it does. It changes the game up considerably.
It does.
Yeah, and some people do want that because it's the more thematic it is for them.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it would be interesting. We do have like Star Wars Attack Wing, and we've got Star Wars Armada.
Yeah.
Will there be somewhere down the line a Star Trek Armada?
No idea. I mean, I don't know if WizKids would even license it, or maybe it'll, lose the license and move over. But Star Trek Armada exists because someone modded it. Someone in the BGG forums went in there and actually figured out how to do it.
And that is somebody that was playing Armada and thought this would be really good for Attack Wing. For Star Trek. I mean, so that's basically where that came from, and it's a good mod.
Aye.
But like you said, there's other mods out there.
Oh yeah, there's hundreds. You could do an entire show just on the mods out there, because there are so many. Because people like their game in different ways. That's where the title came from: infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Yes. But it just shows you how versatile the game can be. Absolutely. And why it can be so much fun. And you don't need to be restricted.
And also how creative a lot of the people who play the game are. That they're willing to go to the time and effort to come up with these different ways of play and figure it out and kind of make it their own in that regard.
Exactly. And that's what's really good about this game, and I think that's why I could see it lasting a lot longer and, going into the future.
Well, with that kind of the kind of creativity you can see in the game, one of the big things about it, even if WizKids stops supporting it, there are templates out there for you to make your own ships. You just need access to a printer.
Yeah.
So a lot of games can survive beyond. Not that WizKids have shown any interest in shutting down Attack Wing, but a lot of games can survive beyond their kind of original run life because of these mods and because of the different ways of play and the passion of the fans.
Yeah, and websites like Shapeways that you can go on and order yourself a ship that you can paint up and stuff like that, and
absolutely,
and do it that way. So yeah, I totally see where you're coming from with that.
There are a great many ways beyond the kind of stock rules to play this game. As I said, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Anything to add to that, Harley?
Yep, just one thing before we go. There's loads of information out there, social media for Star Trek Attack Wing. You can get involved, see the inputs from players across the world and how they play the game. And
there's quite an active Facebook group.
Yes, there is.
Where we get most of our information. Let's be honest.
Yep, and there's a lot of great discussions there about how players play and what they look forward to, and certain build topics and rule topics. So yeah, it's good for new players coming in just to just to see what's out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, a lot of people not happy with Facebook right now, but if you are happy with Facebook, have a have a look for the Star Trek Attack Wing community, I believe it's called. Well worth joining if you have an interest.
Did you hear that, Cambridge Analytica?
I'm sure they know already. So this has been Phasers to Malky. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.